My guest today is Matthew Carter, class of 1995, the original graduating class of Governor's School. Hi, Matthew. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. It's a beautiful day in Palmyra, Virginia.
Excellent. Can you give us a quick update on everything that's happened since you graduated those many years ago?
Goodness. I'll summarize the first big swath by saying I had a first career in academia. I went right from college to grad school and got my PhD in 2004. I was able to do it that fast because I got it in England at Oxford. And I taught first in England, then briefly in the US, and then for a long time in Ontario, Canada, as a professor of Latin and Greek with primary expertise in epic poetry of Virgil and Homer. And the poetry of the ancient world remains very dear to my heart. But I made a big switch, more than just a career switch, in the summer of 2013 when a marriage unraveled, when I needed to get sober from alcohol. And I've been back in Virginia, no longer seeing the world since the fall of 2013, where I've grown ever more active both in issue politics in the Commonwealth and also in the wonder that is the recovery community in Virginia.
Hmm.
I am proud to say I've been sober from alcohol for more than 5 years.
Congratulations. That's a meaningful accomplishment.
Although I've identified that big pivot, that big switch in 2013, the real through line, and that covers how I spent my time, even as a governor's school student up till now. I have stayed passionate about and really involved in as an amateur, playing the piano and singing. And every couple of years, I've challenged myself to learn a new language. So I'm proud of the continuity there, both in piano and in linguistics.
Did you have a love for language even before Governor's School? Because I know the 6 years of language they had us take in Governor's School, I can't say that I've maintained any of my Spanish or German experience, but you've certainly excelled.
Yeah, I had a middle school teacher. I went to Albert Hill, just down the road from the old TJ building. Middle school teacher, a couple actually, one Spanish teacher and one Latin teacher. And of course, it's unusual that you get Latin in a public middle school. Yeah, and I stayed friends with them, and they whet my appetite for the language teaching at GSGIS.
Very cool. I saw on your timeline. Did you get remarried? Did you get married again?
I did just last month, and it sort of nicely underscores what I said before, because Kelsey and I first met at a political event, and then we got to know each other singing in choirs together. The marriage story, having to pull off an hour-long Zoom wedding with basically a shoestring budget and people involved from all over the world, that felt authentically 2020. And we're very, very proud of how it turned out. In fact, I'll send you a link to the video. We're just Kelsey is, on the one hand, a Jewish atheist, and I am, on the other hand, an Episcopalian with roots in Roman Catholicism. And it was really hard to find a service that would be authentic to both of what we believe and each of what we believe. But I think we did pull it off. And yeah, it was just uh, let the fact that I'm willing to show you, comma, interviewer, comma, this video be partial proof of how proud I am of it.
I think what we found in sort of planning and executing that is that the significance of the thing became larger, became wider, because our guests, our audience, our family, however you want to put it, saw this as a bright spot onto which they were kind of projecting their own hopes or sort of their awareness of the scantiness of hopes. So it wasn't our plan at first, but the whole project took on this sort of a larger symbolic aspect, which was interesting.
I was able to dig through your Facebook, and there was this thing going around in 2009 called 25 Things, which you answered.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I'm so glad you mentioned it. Hold on. I need to make sure.
There's two excerpts that I wanted to kind of pull from. One was, I'm going to actually just read you what you wrote there, because I think that a lot of people identify with this. This was, I don't remember which question it was an answer to, but it was just a thing. Like most everyone I know, I am ambivalent toward the religion of my childhood. The idea of unconditional and eternal forgiveness and mercy is so amazing to me that honestly I think it is beyond my understanding. Do you still feel that way? Were you able to come to terms? I kind of asked that in follow-up to the marriage question, because I think I was raised Presbyterian, and it was kind of coincidental that it happened to be Presbyterian. I never identified specifically with that religion, but that's just kind of how I was raised. And so what is it about Episcopalian that is meaningful to you, or how have you come to grips with that ambivalence?
Yeah, well, first let me say, and I go out of my way not to make this obvious on social media or anything else. I am an aspirant for the Episcopal priesthood. I'm starting seminary next year. I had, before I caught this political bug, I had a first plan which would have had me already done by seminary. I was going to start in 2016, but then I got a chance to campaign against Trump, and that seemed more urgent at the time. Without sort of professing any frustrating agnosticism, I find that the more that I actually study these questions, the more the kind of Socratic humility takes over, and I just have to say how little I actually understand about it. In terms of the idea of mercy and forgiveness, I would say my own views have been nuanced and massaged by Kelsey, who's a big believer in a Jewish teaching on mercy and forgiveness, which is it's all well and good and it brings great relief to the forgiver, but it can't be offered sincerely unless the other party shows atonement, a willingness to change. And, that's a critique of Christian forgiveness that I've heard in Alcoholics Anonymous too. It's just, it becomes less meaningful if it's simply reflexive. Knee-jerk forgiveness as a kind of teaching is less profound and less meaningful than conditioning it upon a real desire to change in the other person. So that's the best specific I can offer you to the question, but I'd rather frame it in the larger thing of realizing with great awe and reverence just how much there is to learn about the history of theology. I find that I think I know less about it as time goes on, not more.
So the election looms large this year. What specific things are you doing? Like what activities or groups are you a part of that you're active in, and to try to make a meaningful impact there?
Okay, well, I will say this in a kind of time capsule certainty. A lot of people agonize about expressing their political philosophy. I think I've distilled it to something tangible and real. I am committed to working to elect Black women. That is where my political journey in Virginia is taken. So I'm working for my friend Amy Wentz, who's running for Richmond City Council in the 8th Ward. I'm working for my friend Alexis Rogers, who's challenging the incumbent LeVar Stoney. That was sort of an outgrowth of the violent anti-protester behavior on the part of police at Marcus David Peters Circle. I'm choosing all these words very carefully. I know how the game is played, but yeah. What I am doing, I guess if you want to put a metric on it, making phone calls and doing other kinds of direct voter contact and even a little bit of fundraising for these wonderful, wise Black women whom I'm proud to call my friends.
I wanted to ask kind of a provocative question. Like, is it harder today than it was 20 years ago to be a good white man, whatever that means to you?
That is provocative. I think the fretting that I might do about my own identity of goodness, it got in the way then and it gets in the way now.
Mm-hmm.
People say, you know, if you crave esteem and admiration and recognition for trying to be a good ally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allyship is conferred, not claimed. Then that's probably time you should have spent just actually doing something. Again, I recognize as a student of language that might read as an evasive answer, but I'm resisting it because, again, these are breaths we have drawn where we're not actually doing anything to be anti-racist.
Um, so going back to your 25 things, one of the other items that jumped out at me was that you wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail in the next decade, and that was in 2009. So have you been able to accomplish that?
Oh, you know, I would be so hand-wringing because the truth is I haven't done that, except since you're drawing on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
I also wrote that I was sad that I would never be able to either do a flip turn or sing a low C. I can do both of those things now.
Wow, well done.
So, yeah, I mean, that's like, as someone who cerebrates too much, the physical accomplishment as a person with cerebral palsy of learning that, you know, tricky for me thing was a point of great pride, and that just happened recently. I have hiked bits of the AT. My dream of through hiking exists, but I also have to grapple with the fact that I'm going to be on blood thinners for life. I have a hypercoagulability disorder, and it might not be the safest thing for me, you know, who could very easily bleed out, you know, if with even like a medium-sized cut, to do it without a real network of support and supervision. So I really do cherish that hope still, but I can't exactly safely do it solo.
Gotcha. Very good. Um, One thing that I definitely resonates with me when you talk, you in your 25 things, it said you sometimes you're glib at best, or sometimes eloquent. I find you incredibly eloquent. I haven't talked to you a
Well,
lot, but on this call so
obviously
far,
that was the highlight of this interview. Let's tag that part for the preview.
for sure, you to me come across outside of your head as someone who's incredibly eloquent.
Mm-hmm.
How do you wrestle with the overactive cerebral part of you that I think that a lot of us identify with in terms of choosing the words in real time? How do you agonize after the fact or before the fact? When do you do your agonizing? How do you
Yeah.
wrestle with that?
So I think the effective agonizing happens about a month before, let's say. So I've got this huge speaking gig at the end of August, big audience. I'm already getting nervous about it. I'm probably going to be in good shape if I am fretting now rather than the night before. And you want to sort of chart a story of change over adult life. I was up to and including finishing my PhD, still very much night before kind of emender. And I find getting well out in advance of any kind of deadline sort of a gift I give to myself in the name of mental health. Not that I'm not still ex natura a procrastinator, but it feels good because it feels different to wrestle with the stuff in advance. To the larger, sort of more profound question about words and sources and stuff, what's worked for me, oh, that sounds horribly sort of self-satisfied and arrogant. What I have seen as personally valuable as a person who wants to be an ever more effective communicator is to challenge myself by reading things that are really fucking hard. Moby Dick, not reader friendly, really, really hard, amazing, repays the effort. The poet John Ashbery, some of those passages nigh incomprehensible, but wrestling with them, whether or not I come to full comprehension, makes me better at words, at least I hope.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, treating it like a muscle. That's good. Is there
Treating
anything?
it like a muscle.
Is there anything else that you want to share that I haven't asked you about?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just really curious to see how your project emerges and what the through lines are. I've made friends on campaign with somebody who's still a UVA undergrad and graduated from Governors 4 or 5 years ago.
And to hear that person talk about the pressure and the expectations and the workload and the sort of toxic stress, I was saddened, you know, because I remember that too, that kind of pressure. I'll put it this way. I don't necessarily regret giving up every single lunch period to do Battle of the Brains practice.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, as a more full-fledged adult, I see what was lost there, what was given up too. So as I think back on that, you know, highly formative time for me, not just because of the language education, but the political education and the friendships, I hope that the corona makes the whole system more open to sort of what the French educational system is doing these days, or what I understand it to be doing. Less tyrannical emphasis on homework and more channels for nurturing the creativity of the individual. That might sound hopelessly lukewarm, but let me turn it back on the interviewer since we're at the end.
Sure.
Do you think that the bitter and harsh academic expectations that were just in the air did more good than harm?
Yeah, so I certainly wasn't top of my class by any means. I remember we didn't like we kind of.
Well, why are we even having this conversation?
I didn't graduate with a great GPA. I kind of, you know, I both envied and you know, was sympathetic towards those people who I felt were, you know, truly trying to give it their all. It seemed unattainable to me, and I just didn't have the same grit that they did. But I wrestle a lot with, you know, how do you form grit, and especially in formative years of childhood. I think I got as much grit, if we're trying to, like, you know, boil it down, through cross country with Jim Holdren just kind of pushing me in.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I feel bad I haven't mentioned Coach Holdren to this point. I mean, okay. When people got together to remember Andy Creary,
yeah,
it was like a very recognizable component in all of our memories that we learned more from Coach Holdren than from any individual teacher.
Yeah, it's a completely different, you know, curriculum, obviously, but I mean, I think at the base of it is, what are you capable of, and what do you have to go through within the curriculum, whatever that curriculum might be, to figure out what you're capable of without doing too much damage. And I think those two things are constantly at odds with each other potentially. I don't have
beautiful. Speaking of eloquence, that was very eloquent.
Thank you. Matt, I can't think of a better place to end it there, so I'll go ahead and stop recording. Thank you so much for joining me today and for being one of my first.
Sure thing. Yes, and I'll send you that wedding video.
Please do. I will definitely share that. Thanks.
Okay.